Welcome. We're so glad you're here to join us, and let us take you on a small journey in telling you about what a slave can do and what they can't do, here on this informational video of how the slaves started their lives out in the old ancient days of Pompeii. Slaves were mostly coming in from different backgrounds, from either being prisoners of war to being former sailors at sea who were captured by pirates and sold to Pompeians. And now usually a slave would work on a nice large vineyard just like this one and would probably fetch about a good 2,500 denarii. And it would leave owners dancing in vineyards just like this for joy. Think about it this way. You have a lot of people who come in from different areas or parts of the world, and they bring in new product and they fetch new kinds of ideas every day. Well, not necessarily, considering that they had to be obedient to others who owned them. And they owned for different reasons, but it wasn't exactly all in the negative connotation that we know of it today. Most of them, or some of them, were used by the rich or the private artists as bits and pieces of artists themselves. Sometimes they were honestly treated a lot better than the last life that they may or may not have led. Other times, they really acted as sort of second-hand citizens, or lower citizens who needed to just more or less pay a debt. Slaves and families were property of owners who could sell them or rent them out in any way or any time, or really anywhere. Sort of like in this kind of bustling cross-section, a slave wouldn't be too far off from accompanying the master in shopping, or going off into nice parties, or getting things ready for the ready day-to-day life and struggle of moving forward. Now, sometimes slaves would be freed, and they would not really necessarily qualify as freeborn, unless, of course, they were freeing, let's say, a female slave, and she were to, I don't know, copulate or stay with the former master and breed a slave of her own, and only in that case could they be freeborn. And mostly the freeborn citizens had the ability to sit in a large amphitheater, such as this one, in the very early front row seats. However, for other slaves, some weren't ever allowed to even see the theater, or ever come close to it, permitting the master was permitting. Most freedmen were able to sit in the middle range seats, and I consider myself just a little lucky to sit in this kind of spot just right here.
Thanks, Cassie. Now, speaking of freedmen, I bet you're wondering what slaves could and couldn't do whenever they gained their freedom. Well, they could vote, and they could own their business. They could use their resources to benefit the community, like building buildings and graves and shrines. They could be priests in the cult of the emperor and participate in religious cults. They could continue to live and work with their former master, which most did because most needed the money. And they could also start their own business and build his or her own extended family. Freedmen still had obligations to former masters, and they owed them allegiance and support, which is why most stayed out of respect. Now, freeborn women and freed women could not vote or hold office, but might have had some limited independence in business and could participate in public religion. One of those being Eumakia. She is my hero. She was a prominent female citizen in Pompeii who inherited fortune from her father, who made his wealth in manufacturing bricks. Eumakia married into one of the oldest and most prominent Pompeii families. Her money and social position enabled her to assume public office of priestess. She became patron of the town's corporation of fullers and built an impressive building in the Forum. She funded and dedicated it, together with her son Marcus, to Concordia, Augusta, and Pietas. The connection with her son might have been a way to gain public support for his election in the city. This large building with open courtyard and two-tiered portico could possibly be a warehouse for wool and fulling trade, or an auction house, or a guild hall, or a headquarters. There's a lot of options. We don't quite know. Okay, enough about Eumakia. Back to freedmen. There is one thing that freedmen could not do. They couldn't hold formal political office at the highest level.
You hear that, freedmen? You can't take office. That's a no. You're not allowed. It's alright though. You can do all sorts of other things. It's okay.
Ow? But you are right. Well, that's all the time we have for today. We hope you've enjoyed learning about slaves and what they can and can't do once they become freedmen.